Welcome back to my channel, Dreamers. Today I want to talk to you about perspective. This word is the basis of the creation of my latest short, Dungeon of the Animator. If you haven't seen it yet, do it. As for this project, I will make some tutorials about it, obviously in alternating phases, giving space to other things. Today I'm going to talk to you about the basic structure, how I added the perspective background, the foreground behavior of the arms. These two elements allowed me to create this first-person video game effect. I know that today's tutorial will probably interest many people less than this one, but please bear with me. I'll do something more detailed about it. So, as always, I invite you to stay connected to the channel for future updates, and if you haven't already done, subscribe. It's really important to continue the journey together. I removed some filters and special effects to help you better understand the structure of the scene. We'll move step by step, and first I will explain how I created the background, which you can see here from another point of view. Basically, what I did was bring these background layers closer to the viewer to create the illusion of 3D. You can observe all this at this point where the character with the torch in his hand seems to advance into the cave, but in truth it's the cave itself that walks towards the viewer. The background elements are contained in a group. The shapes you see the walls of the cave are 4 separate layers that with the scale animation come towards us. If we scroll down, we find other layers, but they are simple white shades that serve to add depth to the scene. At the bottom we find the ground that closes the group, forming the cave. But now it's time to test ourselves. We'll do an exercise to better understand how it works, and we'll also add the character's arm to create a camera movement. So let's start a new project where we'll recreate the scene from the beginning with the elements that we already have. That I already have. Of course, I always argue with iOS 26, but this time I'll save you the torment. The first element we see is the one that will serve us first of all as a reference for the walls of the cave, and it's the ground. With the distortion tool, now let's try to put it into perspective. Let's take the vertices at the top and bring them to the center of the screen. Holding down, we fix the vertex at this point, so that both are at the same height. Now we take the vertices below and move them up and out to create the illusion that the ground is in perspective. We also modify the ground anchor point and move it to the upper side of the shape. As we'll see later, we'll need to have it in this position for a perfect animation. Don't run away. Okay, that's fine here. With the base of the terrain, we can go and place the elements that make up the cave. I take this layer and bring it above. For today's exercise we'll need 3 of these layers. I'll add some tracks. I take the first shape, resize it and place it in this point. It will be the wall of the cave in the background. As anchor point we move it to this point. Okay, here. Now I copy and paste the shape above. I'm going to invert it to give it some diversity. I could also draw different shapes, but it's not necessary at this point. I then simply resize it to bring it closer to the viewer. And as you can see, the illusion of three-dimensionality is already created. Next step, I'm going to repeat the operation once again, moving even more towards the viewer. First invert and resize. Maybe a little too much. Certainly, with the next Dreams update, I hope there will be the possibility of seeing better beyond the limits of the scene. It will be easier to work in these situations. And you, what you think? If I wanted to make it look like the character is walking towards the back of the cave, the walls will have to slide towards the viewer. With Move and Scale tool, add a keyframe at 10 seconds, for example, of the shape closest to us. I go back to the beginning of the timeline and reduce the size of the shape. I do the same thing with the shape in the center. At the beginning of the timeline, resize. OK. Here we can already see how the walls of the cave are coming towards us. Before continuing, I'm going to change the brightness of the shapes a little so you can see better and give a little more depth to the scene. This one in the center a little darker, for example with a value of 45. OK. OK, I would say that I also have to change the shape in the background a little. I would say clearer. This way, with more depth, the illusion of three-dimensionality works much better. Finally, I'm going to resize the shape in the background a little as before, but very little. OK, at this point we can also create the animation on the ground. Always with the Move and Scale tool, position the keyframes in correspondence with the previous animations, therefore at 0 and 10 seconds. Here it's very simple. At the beginning of the timeline I go to squash the shape. As you will remember, the anchor point is fixed on the upper side of the shape, so I can squash everything in this way. And the background animation is complete. A very important thing will obviously be to group all the elements in a single group, so that you can, for example, resize everything together. So in this way we can arrange the scene without having holes above or below. With just a few elements we made a very interesting background, without having to draw too many details. With a good direction you can get really interesting things. With the elements available within a single group, we can then make random camera movements, as in this case. If we wanted to create a somewhat shaky scene, so to speak, maybe too much shaky. Or we can simply work on the y-axis by moving the entire group up and down to simulate walking, so that it looks like the character is following the path of the cave. Finally, we add our character's arm to create a realistic camera movement. As you will see, it will be really important to use the correct timing. I want the character's gaze to turn to one side. I will therefore have to create two animations, one on the arm and one in the wall group, to move the camera to one side. So let's start adding the first animation on the arm. With the Move and Scale tool, let's set the first keyframe to 1 second and another to 2 seconds. At this point I move the arm to the right, as if the character wanted to look and move in that direction. Next step, add the camera movement. For now I set the keyframes in correspondence with the arm movement. Obviously this animation goes on the wall group, where we find both the elements of the scenario and the arm. When the arm moves, the entire group also moves to the right. I'm going to reposition this one so that the shape is clearly visible. OK. The animation already works very well, but we'll still need to add one small detail to make it perfect. Do you remember the timing? I just need to delay the animations a bit on the wall group. Here at 1 second and here 2. By creating an asynchronous movement, I get a more realistic effect. In this case, the body's reaction time is faster than the gaze. This is obviously just a way of modifying the timing, but it helps us not only to make the animation more realistic, but also more fluid. This was just an appetizer of everything that's inside this project. Some of you also asked me how I had audio in my shorts. Well, I could be interesting to do something. What do you think? In today's video we saw how with just a few elements we can build an effective scene within Dreams. All this using intelligently in rig animations without having to do too many drawings. In short, working frame by frame, you can certainly get much more interesting results. But for the moment here, you have to optimize the time with the tools that are already present, and drawing every single frame would be madness for the moment. Great dreamers! Thank you so much for watching, see you next time!